didn't go back for the reunion. I went back because my mother made a choice 9 years ago that I had documented proof of, and the man my sister was about to marry had just walked into my professional life without knowing it. That's the part nobody in that banquet hall understood when they saw me walk in. They saw a woman in a blazer holding a glass of sparkling water, someone who looked vaguely familiar, maybe a cousin, maybe a college friend. My mother saw me, and her expression did something complicated. Not warm, not guilty, just calculating, the way it always was when I appeared somewhere she hadn't planned for. She crossed the room in that slow, purposeful way she has, the way that makes it look like she's floating toward you instead of intercepting you. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I RSVP'd," I said. She smiled tightly. "You could have called." And then my brother-in-law's business partner walked past us and stopped cold. He looked at me the way you look at someone when context and setting don't match, when a person exists in two separate rooms of your life and suddenly both doors are open at once. He went so pale I thought he was about to be sick. He grabbed the arm of the man next to him. He said something I couldn't hear. My sister noticed from across the room. Her face changed. My mother kept smiling, kept talking, kept doing what she does. She had no idea what she was standing next to. You can't understand that moment without understanding what came before it. I was 22 when I learned that fairness in our family was a performance, not a policy. I'd been accepted to a pre-med program at a state university 3 hours from home. Not a reach school, not an Ivy, just a solid program with a good clinical track, the kind of school where people who work hard actually become doctors. I had a partial scholarship. I needed the rest covered, and I needed it soon because the enrollment deposit deadline was in 2 weeks. I sat down at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning with the acceptance letter, the financial aid breakdown, and a number. The number was $14,200 for the first year after scholarship. I'd done the math. I'd looked into payment plans. I wasn't asking them to drain anything. I just needed help bridging the gap while I figured out the rest. My mother was making coffee. My father was reading something on his phone. My younger brother was still asleep because that's what 19-year-olds do on Sundays. I laid out the papers and said, "I need to talk to you about school." My mother poured her coffee without looking up. "How much?" I told her. She set the mug down. "That's a lot." "I know. I have the scholarship and I can work part-time during. We're not in a position for that right now," she said. My father put his phone down. That was unusual. He was actually paying attention. "We'll figure out something," he said, which I'd learned by then meant nothing. It meant he was buying time. It meant he didn't want to be the one to say no directly. "What does figure out something mean?" I asked. He picked up his phone again. My mother sat down across from me. She looked at the acceptance letter the way you look at a bill you've decided not to pay. "You're smart," she said. "You'll find a way. That's what being an adult means." I sat with that for a second. "You paid for Kyle's SAT prep, his application fees, his campus visits. That's different." "How?" She didn't answer immediately. She rearranged the sugar bowl, which she does when she's buying time. "Kyle is still figuring himself out," she said finally. I was 22, enrolled in a pre-med program, asking for help with tuition. Kyle was 19, majoring in what he called exploring options. And 3 weeks later, my parents co-signed a lease on an apartment near his campus, paid his security deposit, and sent him a monthly allowance they called getting on your feet money. I saw the transaction on a shared family expense app my mother had added me to years ago for tracking household bills. She'd forgotten I still had access. She never removed me. I don't know if that was careless or if she simply never considered that I'd notice. I noticed. I made it 1 full semester on my own. Savings from 3 years of weekend waitressing, a small personal loan I didn't tell anyone about, and a work-study job in the biology department that paid $9.75 an hour and required me to be somewhere at 7 a.m. 3 days a week. The second semester, the number stopped working. A billing error in the financial aid office, something about a verification form that hadn't been processed. froze my aid disbursement while the fix was being corrected. I needed $30,800 to hold my enrollment. They gave me 10 days. I went back to the kitchen table. I had the paperwork this time. I had the letter from the financial aid office explaining the error, the timeline for resolution, and the exact amount needed as a bridge. My mother read it and handed it back to me. "This isn't something we can do right now." "It's temporary," I said. "The aid comes back once the form clears. Then wait for it to clear. I'll lose my enrollment. There's a deadline." Then explain that to the school. I did. They need the money. My father came in from the garage. He caught the tail end of the conversation and did what he always did. Stood in the doorway, half in and half out, so he could leave quickly if he needed to. "Is this about school?" he said. "Yes," I said. He looked at my mother. She gave him nothing. "We don't have it right now," he said. "Kyle's allowance is $800 a month," I said. I hadn't planned to say that. It came out flat, not accusatory, just factual. The kitchen went quiet in a specific way. Not the quiet of consideration. The quiet of people who've been caught and have decided to be offended instead of honest. My mother stood. "That's completely different and you know it. Tell me how." "He's struggling. I'm losing my enrollment." "Then you'll reapply," she said. "You'll take a year. You'll save up. That's what people do." I looked at my father. He said, "She's right." He said it like it cost him nothing. Maybe it didn't. I didn't cry in the car. I waited until I was back in my apartment, the one I shared with 2 other girls from class, the one where we kept the heat at 63 degrees from November to March to save on the utility bill. And then I sat on the floor of my closet and cried in a way I hadn't since I was maybe 10 years old. Then I stopped, not because I felt better, because I'd made a decision. I withdrew from the program. Not dramatically. I just filed the form, sent the email to my academic advisor, who was kind in a way that made it worse, and packed up my desk in the library study room I basically lived in for 4 months. My mother called 3 days later. She'd heard through my aunt. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did. We could have figured something out." "When?" I said. It wasn't a question. A pause. "You're being dramatic." "I'm moving," I said. "I'll send you my new address when I have one." I didn't wait for her response. I'd been researching for 2 weeks before I made the appointment. Not the military. Not at first. I want to be clear about that, because people hear I joined up after a hard time and assume it was impulsive. It wasn't. I had a plan, and the plan required credentials, and the fastest path to the credentials I needed ran through a specific kind of structure. The Healthcare Services Apprenticeship Program run through the Army Medical Department was something I'd found at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday while eating gas station crackers and reading financial aid alternatives. It offered full education benefits, including the ability to continue toward a degree, paid training in clinical settings, and a career path toward becoming a medical officer. If I completed it properly, I'd be eligible for the Army's Inter-Service Physician Assistant Program within a few years, fully funded, fully credentialed, real. The recruiting office was in a strip mall off the highway between a tax preparation place and a UPS store. The recruiter was a sergeant first class named Okafor. He was not what I expected. He asked very few questions and listened to the answers of the ones he did ask. "You want the medical track," he said. "Yes." "Not support, not admin, medical." "Yes." He looked at my transcript. "Your GPA, 3.7. He nodded once. "We can work with this." I signed the papers 11 days later. Basic was what basic is. I won't romanticize it and I won't catastrophize it. It was hard in ways that had nothing to do with physical difficulty and everything to do with learning that you could keep going past the point where you'd previously stopped. I discovered that about myself not in one dramatic moment, but in increments, over 8 weeks of small choices. To get up, to not complain, to run the last quarter mile even when no one was watching. I did well enough to move through the medical track without interruption. AIT. Practical rotations. The IPAP application which I submitted 3 years in, and which was, at that point, the hardest thing I'd ever done. The interview panel asked me why I wanted this, and I told them something close to the truth, because I started this path before I was interrupted, and I don't see a reason to leave it unfinished. I was accepted. The program is 2 years. It's graduate level. At the end of it, you're a physician assistant, commissioned as a first lieutenant, with a real clinical role and a real career. I graduated on a Thursday in May. It rained. My academic advisor, a colonel named Vasquez, told me at the reception afterward that I was one of 3 students in my cohort who had come in without a completed undergraduate degree and finished in the top quarter. I didn't tell her why I hadn't finished. It didn't seem relevant anymore. My family didn't come. I hadn't told them. I'd been assigned to a medical unit at a base in the Mid-South for about a year when I started getting the calls. The first was from my mother. She'd found my number through my aunt, who had been given it for emergencies and had apparently decided this qualified. "We're so proud of you," my mother said in the tone she uses when she's about to ask for something. I waited. "Kyle's having a hard time," she continued. "He lost his job and the lease is up and I can't help with that," I said. "Your family." "I know. That means something." "It does," I agreed. "But it doesn't mean what you think it means." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I just don't understand why you have to be so cold about this." "I'm at work in 40 minutes," I said. "I have to go." I hung up. The second call came 6 months later. My father, this time, voice careful and deliberate the way it gets when he's been coached by my mother to try a different approach. "We miss you," he said. "I let that sit there. Kyle's doing better," he added. "He's thinking about school. Your mother thought maybe you could talk to him." "About what?" "About how you made it work." I almost laughed. "I'll think about it," I said. I didn't think about it. By year 6, I was based in a larger installation and had taken on an administrative role alongside my clinical duties, reviewing personnel medical fitness records for deployment eligibility. It's exactly as bureaucratic as it sounds, and exactly as consequential as it doesn't. A fitness determination can hold up a deployment, delay a promotion, affect a contract. People think medicine is about the dramatic moments. Mostly it's about documentation. I was good at documentation. I saw my sister's engagement announced on social media through a chain of tagged photos. She'd tagged our aunt, who was on my suggested list, and the algorithm did the rest. My sister in a restaurant booth, a ring, a man whose face I half recognized before I recognized it fully. He looked familiar the way a name on a form looks familiar, because he was. His name was on a contractor personnel file that had come across my desk 3 weeks earlier, one of the civilian specialists embedded with our unit. His medical fitness documentation had an anomaly, not a red flag exactly, a gap, an inconsistency in reported history that had been flagged by someone else and landed in my queue for secondary review. I pulled the file again when I got home that night. Same name, same date of birth. Same face in the contractor ID photo. I sat with that for a long time. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I knew it meant something. My sister's wedding invitation arrived in a cream envelope with gold lettering, my mother and father's names embossed at the bottom like they were co-presenting a show. I hadn't spoken to my sister in almost 4 years. I hadn't spoken to my parents in nearly 2. The invitation felt less like a gesture of reunion and more like a formality they'd included me in so no one could say they hadn't. I had a professional reason to be careful about any contact with the contractor whose file was in my review chain. I had an ethical reason to disclose the connection to my supervising officer the moment I recognized it. I did both of those things before I responded to the invitation. My supervising officer, a major named Hollister, handled it the way good officers handle conflict of interest disclosures, efficiently and without drama. She reassigned the file within the same day and noted my disclosure in the record. You won't have any further contact with that case, she told me. Attend your family event, keep it clean. I RSVP'd yes. The venue was a renovated mill building that had been turned into an event space. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of aesthetic that costs a lot of money to look casually rustic. My mother had always had a talent for spending on surfaces. I arrived alone in a dark blazer and slacks, not in uniform. I wasn't there in any official capacity, and wearing service attire to a family event felt like the kind of statement I wasn't trying to make. I was there as a sister. Whatever else was true, I was also that. My mother spotted me near the coat check. She moved toward me the way she always does, not rushing, not warm. You came, she said. You invited me. She looked me over the way she does when she's assessing whether she needs to feel threatened. Whatever she found, she filed it away. Your brother's here, she said, like that was neutral information. I know. I saw him. My sister found me a few minutes later. She looked genuinely happy, which I'd been prepared for, and also nervous, which I'd expected. You look really good, she said. You look really good, she said. It was true. She hugged me and I hugged her back, and for a few seconds it was close to simple. Then my mother reappeared and the orbit shifted. She was talking about centerpieces to someone nearby, but loud enough that I was meant to hear the performance of her hosting, her taste, her management of the evening. This was her space. That was the message. I was getting a glass of water when I heard her voice shift. Still social, still surface smooth, but pointed in a way only people who know her can hear. You know, she said to a woman I didn't recognize. Loud enough. My older daughter never quite figured out what she wanted to do. Floated around for a while, but we're just glad she made it tonight. I didn't turn around. I think she does something in the army. Medical, maybe, something low level. The woman made a polite sound. My mother said, You know how it is with some kids. They need more time to find their footing. I set my water glass down. That's when my sister's new husband walked past with his business partner, the man who'd gone pale near the coat check, and the business partner was speaking quickly, quietly, hand on his arm, and my future brother-in-law turned and looked at me across the room. His face did several things in rapid succession. Recognition, calculation, something close to panic. He excused himself. He walked toward me with the deliberate pace of someone who is trying to look calm and is not calm. Excuse me, he said quietly. Are you Captain Reyes? Yes, I said. His jaw tightened. From the medical review unit at yes. He closed his eyes for exactly 1 second, then opened them. You're her sister. I am. I had no idea. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. His business partner had drifted toward us and was now hovering with the careful distance of someone who knows something significant is happening and is choosing not to intervene. My mother arrived like weather. What are you all standing around for? She said lightly. And then she looked at my future brother-in-law's face and her tone adjusted. What's wrong? Nothing, he said. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me with the expression of a man running calculations. My mother turned to me. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes had gone specific. Whatever she said to upset you, she told him, don't worry about it. She does this. She always has to make herself the center. Mom, I said quietly, of every room, every situation, she's been doing it since she was a child. Mom. She turned to me. Full audience now. Guests nearby had gone quiet in the way people do when they realize they're watching something real. She lifted her chin. What? You want me to applaud you for showing up? You disappear for years and now you want to be part of this family when it's convenient for you? Her voice carried. It was meant to. She walked away from everything, my mother said to no one in particular, performing for the room. From school, from us, from her brother. We did everything we could and she chose to leave. And now she's back and she wants Mom. My sister's voice. She'd come up behind her. Stop. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. No one's thinking that. My future brother-in-law said very quietly, Mrs. Serrano. My mother stopped. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. I owe you an apology, he said. You don't, I said. I didn't know you were her sister. When I realized, I should have said something to you directly before tonight. The disclosure was handled through proper channels. That's all that was required. My mother looked between us. What disclosure? What is happening right now? My sister touched her arm. Maybe we should. No, I want to know what's happening at my daughter's wedding. My future brother-in-law turned to face her then. He wasn't unkind about it. He was just precise. Your daughter, he said, is Captain Reyes. She's a physician assistant assigned to the medical review unit that processes fitness documentation for contractors working with her installation. My mother blinked. My file passed through her office 6 weeks ago, he continued. When she recognized my name on the wedding invitation, she disclosed the connection to her supervising officer and requested to be removed from my case, which she was. Immediately. Silence. She recused herself, he said, to protect both of us. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. My sister was staring at me. I didn't know any of this, my sister said. I know, I said. Why didn't you tell me? There wasn't anything to tell. It was handled. You could have warned. It wasn't mine to share. It was a personnel matter. My mother had recovered enough to find her footing again. That's always been her skill. Not emotional intelligence, just recovery speed. This is all very impressive, she said flatly. Is that why you came? To impress us? I came because I was invited, I said, and because I wanted to see my sister get married. Then why does it feel like a performance? I looked at her for a moment. I'm going to get some air, I said. My sister found me outside 10 minutes later, standing near the parking lot edge, where the pavement gave way to a strip of winter bare grass. She stood next to me without speaking for a little while. I believed her, she said finally. When you left, she told me you'd had some kind of breakdown, that you walked away from everything because you couldn't handle the pressure. I know. I tried to call you once in the beginning. I changed my number. I know. She paused. I get it now. I think. I didn't say anything. She did the same thing to me, she said quietly. Smaller, different, but the same pattern. She wrapped her arms around herself. I was the one she liked, so I didn't see it until I was old enough to look back. I know, I said. Are you angry? I thought about it. Not like I used to be. What does that mean? It means it changed. The anger changed into something else. I watched a car pull out of the lot. It became evidence. She looked at me. Evidence of what? Of what actually happened. Not her version. She was quiet for a moment. Then, there's something I need to tell you. I waited. 2 years ago, I found a letter in her filing cabinet. I was looking for the car insurance card. She stopped, steadied herself. It was from your university, a financial aid office letter. She exhaled. About a parent financial certification form, filed after you withdrew, with Dad's signature on it. The air was cold. I could see my breath. It said that financial support had been redirected, she continued. That the household contribution had been reallocated. She looked at me. To my education. I already knew this. I'd requested my own academic record 2 years before that through a formal FERPA request, and the documentation was in a folder in my apartment at home. I'd never shown it to anyone. I hadn't needed to, because by the time I found it, I no longer needed it to feel legitimate in my own story. I already knew what had happened. The paper just confirmed it. I know, I said. She stared at me. You knew? Yes, for how long the while? A while. And you didn't, no. She pressed her hands against her face. Why not? Because I didn't need them to admit it to move on from it. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were wet. That money paid for my sophomore and junior years, she said. I didn't know where it came from. I thought they'd found some. I don't know. I didn't ask. Her voice cracked. I should have asked. You were 20, I said. You didn't know there was something to ask about. I benefited from it. Yes, she stopped. Started again. I'm sorry. I looked at her. She meant it in the specific whole-body way that people mean things when they've just understood something they can't take back. I know, I said. We went back inside eventually. The music had resumed, but the room had that specific texture of a party that's been interrupted and is trying to remember itself. My mother was at a table near the bar, rigid and small, in a way I'd never seen. My father was beside her, holding a glass with both hands, staring at the floor. My future brother-in-law found me near the entrance. He looked steadier than he had an hour ago. I want to say something, he said. You don't have to. I want to. He met my eyes. Whatever is in that file, whatever the flag was, I didn't falsify anything. I want you to know that even though you're not on the case anymore. I know, I said. The flag was a coding discrepancy in how an old provider submitted records. It happens. He exhaled. So it'll clear. It cleared 2 days ago. Major Hollister's team resolved it. He closed his eyes briefly. Okay. He opened them. Okay. You're going to be fine, I said. He nodded. Thank you for handling it the way you did. For being professional about it. That's what the job is, I said. He started to turn away, then stopped. She's wrong about you, you know. Your mother. I said nothing. Whatever she said tonight, whatever she said, she's wrong. I looked at him for a moment. I stopped needing her to know that a long time ago. The legal piece came months later, quietly. I hadn't initiated anything. I'd simply responded truthfully when the university's financial compliance office contacted me as part of a routine audit, one of those backward-looking reviews that institutions run periodically on old financial aid records. I confirmed what the documents showed. My parents retained an attorney. My mother called it persecution. My father called me 3 times and left voicemails that got progressively shorter and more honest. The third one was just him saying my name, then a long pause, then, I'm sorry, I handled it wrong. I've always handled you wrong. He hung up after that. I listened to that one 4 times. The resolution was quiet. Restitution, a formal correction to university records. No criminal charges because the amount and circumstances fell under civil rather than criminal threshold, and because I hadn't asked for criminal charges. I'd asked for accuracy. My mother never called. My father started sending letters. Actual letters, handwritten on yellow legal paper, the kind you can buy at any drugstore. He wrote about small things at first, weather, the garden, a documentary he'd watched. Then he started writing about me, about things I'd done as a kid that he'd apparently been carrying around all these years. My first grade science project, a time I'd stood up for a kid at school when I was 9. Things he'd noticed and never said. I read every one. I answered some of them. My sister and her husband got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, close friends, a restaurant private room with actual good food instead of banquet hall chicken. She asked me to be there. I was there. My mother sat on the other side of the room and we didn't speak, and that was the right amount of distance for now. Maybe forever. I've stopped trying to predict which. My father hugged me when he saw me. He held on longer than he had any right to, and I let him, because holding a grudge against someone who is genuinely trying to understand what they did costs more than I'm willing to spend anymore. Outside afterward, my sister found me. Are you okay? She asked. Yes, I said. She looked at me carefully. You don't have to say that. I know. I meant it. I actually am. She leaned against the building beside me. Do you ever think about going back? To school? To finish? I finished, I said. The PA program is a graduate degree. She laughed a little. Right. I keep forgetting. She shook her head. I still don't fully understand how you did it. One thing at a time, I said, and without asking permission. She went quiet for a moment. Then, I used to think you were the difficult one. She always said that you were the one who made everything harder. I know. I think what she meant, my sister said slowly, was that you were the one who noticed. I looked at her, and when people don't want to be noticed, the person doing the noticing becomes the problem. It was the truest thing anyone in my family had ever said about any of us. Yeah, I said. That's probably right. The air was warm for early spring. Somewhere down the block, someone was grilling, and the smell of it was completely ordinary and good. I'm not going to tell you that everything was resolved, because that's not what resolution looks like in real families. I'm going to tell you that I built a life that didn't require their blessing to be real, and I'm going to tell you that the life is good. That's the part that took the longest, not the documentation, not the legal process, not even the years of silence. The hardest part was understanding that I was allowed to build something good, even if they never acknowledged what they'd taken. I came from a house where love was distributed like a limited resource. I live now in a world where I know that's not how it has to work. That's not nothing. That's, in fact, everything. If this stayed with you, if something here felt familiar in a way you weren't expecting, sit with that. You're not wrong about what you lived through just because no one confirmed it. The truth of your experience doesn't require a signature. If stories like this one matter to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more of the hard, real, complicated kind of honest, stay with us here at Noble Bearing. We're not going anywhere. I used to think the hardest part of what happened to me was the money. The $14,200 I needed and didn't get. The financial aid frozen while my brother's rent got paid on time every month, without anyone calling it a favor. For a long time, that number lived in my chest like something undigested. But that wasn't actually the hardest part. The hardest part was learning to stop waiting for them to admit it. My mother never will. I've accepted that now in the same way you accept weather. Not with peace exactly, but with the kind of tired clarity that stops feeling like defeat after a while. She built a version of events that she can live inside, and nothing I showed her. Not the financial aid letter, not my father's signature on that form, not the career I built without a single dollar of theirs. None of it was going to dismantle the story she needed to tell herself. Some people's version of the truth is load-bearing. You pull it out and they collapse, so they hold it. My father was different. Not good, not at first, but capable of change in a way I hadn't expected. Those yellow legal pad letters started arriving about 8 months after the university audit concluded, and I won't pretend I wasn't moved by them. Not because they fixed anything, because they were evidence of a different kind. Evidence that a person can, even late, choose to look directly at what they did. That takes something. I don't know what to call it except courage arriving several decades behind schedule. What I keep coming back to when I think about all of it is the question of what my parents actually taught me, not what they intended to teach me. What the situation itself, through its own logic, made inevitable. They told me I needed to figure it out. And I did. Not because I was stronger than other people, or because hardship is secretly good for you. I don't believe that, and I won't say it. I figured it out because I had no other option, and because somewhere underneath the hurt there was something in me that refused to let their assessment of my worth be the final word. That refusal wasn't noble, it was just stubborn. But stubbornness, pointed in the right direction over enough years, starts to look a lot like integrity. Sergeant First Class Okafor told me on the day I signed my paperwork, "This isn't a rescue." He was right. It wasn't. It was a structure, a set of standards that didn't shift depending on who was favored. I had never had that before. I didn't know how much I needed it until I was inside it. And Major Hollister, the day I disclosed the conflict of interest without anyone asking me to, she didn't make a big deal of it. She just handled it. But I've thought about that moment a lot since. Because that's what the years actually built in me, not rank, not credentials, but the reflex to do the right thing even when no one would have noticed if I hadn't. That reflex doesn't come from suffering. It comes from deciding over and over, in small situations, what kind of person you're going to be. My sister said something to me outside that restaurant on her wedding day that I've turned over in my mind probably 100 times since. She said I was the one who noticed, and that when people don't want to be noticed, the person doing the noticing becomes the problem. I think that's true of a lot of lives that look from the outside like they went sideways. Some people get labeled difficult early, dramatic, too sensitive, too much, and sometimes what that actually means is that they were paying attention in a house where attention wasn't welcome. If that's you, if you were the one who noticed, I want you to hear this. You were not wrong about what you saw. The truth of your experience doesn't require anyone else's signature to be real. Build anyway, document everything, and give your trust to structures and people that earn it, not to the ones who simply expected it by default. That's the whole lesson. Everything else is just the story around it.